Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the video. In this video, I'm going to be showing some sound design techniques. In this particular track I'm working on, I would like to show you how I made this sound. I'll just play it in contrast with the rest of the track, just so you can see what I'm going for. So it's kind of like a mid-range bass layer type synth sound. I don't usually make kind of like trance leads or this kind of thing. I usually do like lots of layers and weird sound design. So let's have a look at the actual layers. This has been split into two or three. These first two are more or less duplicates of each other. One's panned a little bit to the right and one's completely in the center. I'll just solo them so you can hear the difference. So it's kind of the mix has been brought to the back, panned to the right with some delay, some side chaining, and the EQs taking up quite a bit of the low end and also quite a bit of the high. And in the second layer, you can see there's more high range in the EQ, a little bit more compression, and there's no panning. So both layers together, you kind of get more of a stereo width. And this layer here, I think this is just my recording of when I was making this sound, and it's just not being cut up but laid over the top. I thought it sounded quite nice. Okay, so let's have a look at how I actually made this. I'm using Reactor 5 and an ensemble called Razor, which is brilliant. If you've not used it before, it's really great for these types of sound design, like very thick, warm sounds, great for like square basses and very futuristic sounding synthesizer. Okay, so got quite a basic MIDI patch going on here. It's just we're in the key of G and we have a note on the very first beat, a note on the offbeat here, and we got this little like this little bit here as well. So it sounds like this. I've just looped it. Yeah, so nothing too mind-blowing there, just a nice little repetition. Let's have a look in Razor. So this has just been initialized. So this is what it looks like when you load it up. We're running pulse wave, and this is going into a low pass filter. And the cutoff frequency I'm going to modulate with envelope 2. So you've got these little dials here. If I select here, and I can select envelope 2, and that's going to modulate my cutoff frequency. So I'm just going to turn that dial up to about 30. I'm just going to tweak the decay till it sounds to my liking. So at about 11 o'clock it's sounding quite nice, quite percussive. Maybe take the cutoff down a little bit. So I think my starting point, I'm going to keep it about here, maybe increase the envelope a little bit. Obviously there's no wrong way of doing this, it's all down to taste. This is more just me showing you how I would automate these sounds. So the way I'd do this is I'd press configure here in Ableton, and whatever dial I press, it will create a little arrow for me, which I can then draw on the sequencer, my automation. So when I move this up and down, there we go, there she blows, she's down there. Turn configure off. Okay, so I'm going to be using the pencil tool, which lives up here. And I'm just going to be drawing in square shapes. So I'm not going to be doing any curves as such, and on this little note here, that's where going to be my main emphasis on the frequency change. And to get the kind of call and response sound, I want this particular repetition to change on every bar. See this one a bit lower and then this one a bit higher. We're going to get a kind of call and response type thing. So I'll just knock that out. Again, there's no wrong way of doing this. It can all be down to how you want it to sound, of course. You could just do it for 4 sections and then duplicate it and then make some slight changes in the second bit. And that halves the workload. You can kind of almost do this blind. It's always going to sound good. Okay, so that's the first process. That's the first automation I'd be drawing. Next, let's go back into here. I'm going to add a reverb. So I'm going to be using, reverb synced and normal. I'm just going to use the normal reverb. And next I'll be automating the wet and decay level. First I'm just going to take the decay down to start off with. So when playing it full, see how it just spaces it out completely. So I'm just going to automate that as well and draw that in. And actually, if you do this effect in between the gaps, you get some real weird sounds happening. Well, like just before the gap. Throw in a few squares in there, just kind of random. So now we've got this kind of in and out gated reverb effect. Another thing we can configure and automate is the wave shape. So we can go between pulse and saw, or if we go in the middle, we can have like a bit of both. So let's have a little play around with that. So maybe I have this section, we'll just change here. So it's already starting to sound quite similar to the finished design. Now I'm going to be using Ableton's Bit Crusher, which is called Redux, which you find up here in Audio Effects, Redux, just there. And it's going to just be using in little small increments. So, if you go too high with this dial, it just destroys the sound. But if you just dial in little squares, little automations, it has quite a nice little, makes these little zappy, poppy artifacts. Especially in the gaps where there's nothing, you can kind of get these weird, strange sounds. Can also do a few sweeps. So if I come out my pencil tool, hold Alt and make curves like this. So yeah, you don't want to go nuts with this. Like if you go too high, it just destroys the sound. I don't know, it might be what you're going for, but in this case. Okay, so yeah, so far we've automated the frequency, the reverb, dry and wet signal, and I'm automating this redux dial here. And quite a simple technique over quite a simple MIDI pattern, and more or less got that sound. So let's have a little listen how that sounds over the track. I'm gonna put on this EQ and just take out the low end so it doesn't mix the low frequencies with the bass line. Let's have a little listen how that sounds. Also, I would be doing some side chaining, which will be side chaining a dummy kick that I've made up the top here, which is just my kick duplicated and muted. And that will be side chaining the overall sound. So I've just turned the threshold down a bit, nothing too complicated there. Also, I love using the serum effects. It's great because just in one instrument we have all of the serum effects that you can apply onto audio, you can apply onto your other VST sounds, and I really like this hyper dimension and get a multitude of different textures and tones by adjusting the mix and the size, and you have this unison which you can do a lot with. Let's have a little listen what it sounds like with the hyper dimension effect. It adds a whole new dimension to the sound. For now, at this stage, this is where I would then bounce the sound down to audio. So we have an audio channel here. I'm just going to click resample, hit record, have got this soloed. Actually, what I like to do is I like to click these two icons here and then turn off the loop, and then what it will do, it will record whatever's within the loop hands-free and then just stop recording afterwards. Easy peasy. Okay, so I'm just going to mute that and disarm it so it's out my vision. And let's have a look what we can do with the audio. So now we have this audio recording, and if we look back at the original sound, you can see what I've actually done. I've just kind of I've cut out these parts here, and I've almost just left the parts of the track that has been automated. So if I look back in here, see where the frequency has been automated here and here and here. I've more or less just left those bits and just cut out the these extra tails of the sound, and left some, of course. And yeah, so again, there's no right and wrong way of doing this. You can cut it up how you like, but the idea is just to get more of a kind of gated effect. So usually the way I do this is I just add another audio channel underneath, and first I kind of just do it by eye and then occasionally play it back. So I'm just highlighting the sections I want. I'll mute this and then just play it back. See, sounding a bit more glitchy and a bit more gaty. So just taking these sections here, just power through this. Okay, cool. So now that's all been chopped up, we have our gated effect. I'll just mute our original layer, and I'm just going to turn up the volume a little bit, and let's have a little listen. So as you can hear now, it's sounding a lot more gated. I'll be running this through a Valhalla reverb, which I have down here in my sends, my return channels, and it's pretty much set to the default. However, I've just taken down the decay to about 1 o'clock and the mix is at 80%. I've applied EQ8, Ableton EQ, just taking out a little bit of the low end. You can actually do this in this dampening section here. However, I just prefer to use the EQ. Something worth mentioning, this top layer here, where we've got all our tails and blips and blobs, the part that I'd usually discard, I always go through and have a little listen just to see if there's anything there, any happy accidents that may have happened. It's always worth having a little listen, see what's there. Okay, so I'm just going to unmute that so I have a little listen. Like these little bits here, you can totally use them. Actually, in this case, in this track, when I was going through this exact process with these audios, I discovered this little blip here, which I ended up using as a kind of base layer. Did some basic processing, some EQ, bit of amp to bring up the volume, and some echo, which is a delay, which has a bit of reverb, bit of stereo, and also pretty much running everything for a Valhalla reverb. I'll just play you that. Which ended up sounding really cool over the top of the track. Yeah, so it's always worth going through these little leftovers here. You never know what you find. It's kind of like going to a charity shop or a thrift store and rummaging through the bargain bin. You never know, you might find some like quirky jeans or some old boots. You never know what you'll find, so it's always good to go through it just before discarding it, or just keep it for later. You don't have to process it now, so I'll just deactivate that for now. So it's out my vision, and let's move on to how this layer can be further processed. I'm going to just keep going between the original and using it as a reference. So first we have a limiter, a glue compressor, and an EQ. Go straight in with the glue compressor. This is turned up just to kind of maximize the volume a bit. Okay, then we got an EQ. I'm just taking out a lot of the main low end, and somewhere around this 300 range is often a bit problematic when playing over the top of the bass. And we're also taking out quite a bit of the high end here. Let's do that. Take out some of this. After an EQ, we have we're side chaining, so using the Ableton compressor, just the normal one. And if we click on this arrow here, we have the side chain section, and the audio is coming from a kick, which is my kick, just duplicated and muted and renamed dummy dummy kick, which is just my sidechain. And I'm just taking down the threshold just to clean it up a bit. Probably even got take the reverb out a little bit. Cool. Right, next we have Serum Effects, which is a really good extension of Serum, because then you can use the Serum effects on audio or other VSTs. So I tend to use it quite a lot. mainly because it's just easy. It's just got everything all in one. It's just got a bunch of effects all in one. So let's go into here. We can just have a look here as well. So yeah, we got a hyper dimension effect, which is kind of adds a lot of stereo width, gives like a real spacey dimension to the sound. We can actually control this unison dial even further. It goes up to about 7. You can actually, if you go on the global page here, you can control the width of the overall unison here. So at the moment it's at 100, but you can go between increments of 0 and 100. So that's really handy. You have a little bit more flexibility with that effect. Okay, then we've got a phaser. We have a delay, which is going through a filter, and it looks like, yeah, so I'm taking out some of the highs here, and so more, yeah, just cutting out more highs. And I think that's why this first layer is more in the back of the mix, and this is a ping pong delay. Haven't done anything with the feedback, and the mix is to about 50%. There's a reverb and a distortion. We just quickly just do that. Reverb and a distortion. The distortion here is a downsample, which is very similar to the Ableton Redux, which is a bit crusher effect. I have it in this high pass setting, and I've kind of made a little curve like this. However, I'm going to tweak this to the actual sound of the audio that we've created here, because it's going to sound different. It's not going to be exactly the same, so you kind of want to tweak it differently. So I'm going to just play it back and start tweaking these parameters around. Okay, so this phaser, I might turn this down a little bit. I'm going to set the right to 1/8. Now it's got a more of a tailed kind of hypnotic delay happening. You can hear this redux working on some of these more resonant sounds. You kind of get that vocal. As a lot of this is happening with the distortion, and if the distortion is set in resample, which we have there, emphasizes those vowely sounds quite nice. Right, let's go back into the example, and yeah, and so there's just another EQ after that. So obviously I've just added a bunch of extra frequencies and all types of things here, so we're just going to mix that back in. So take out the extreme lows, some of this 300 range, take out some of these highs. I'll just have another look at what I've done there. Yeah, so just kind of toned it down a bit, simmered her down a little. Okay, the next layer, which, as I explained before, is more or less a duplicate. However, you can see here I've deleted some of the sweeps and just kept some of them in the top channel and some not in here. So there's a little bit of variation. So I can do that. So here is just a duplicate of the top one, and I'll just do that. I'll just take out some of these. I can press Command J, which will consolidate some of these clips, and if I press R, if I click on it and press R, it will reverse. I've done a few of these reverses here. Take out some of these. Layer 1 is panned more so to the right. Layer 2 it has not been panned. So layer 2 should be sitting more at the front, and layer 1 should be sitting more at the back of the mix. And let's go and have a look at some of the audio processing on this layer here. So running it for an amp, then a limiter, assuming that amp is creating a lot of volume, and then this limiter is just crunching it down again, and then I'm increasing the volume again with a glue compressor, EQing out a bunch of the highs and the lows, some of the mids, side chaining it, running it through a serum again with similar effects to the first layer. However, it looks like I've taken out the phaser and added a flanger instead. The delay is more or less the same, but the filter has more emphasis on the high frequencies, and the distortion has been completely turned off and then finished off with another EQ. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste into our demonstration channel. However, as I explained before, because this is different audio, it's been made slightly differently. It's not going to be exactly the same as the reference. I'm going to add these effects as I would as if I was making it from scratch, and tune them as I go. So amp, I'm just going to press solo. Okay, so I'm happy with that. It's obviously limiting quite a bit. Glue compressor. It's just pushing that volume up a lot. Obviously we're getting a lot of sub now, so EQ, take out a lot of that low, taking out some of that 300 range as well, and some of those harsh highs, I'm taking out them. Compressors doing the side chaining from the dummy kick, and then the serum effects, I can just come in here and we can just go through these again. So I turn these off. First, let's start with the hyper dimension effect. And then we have a flanger. We have a slower rate, full mix, more or less a full mix. The delay is running 1/4, 1/8. And a ping pong, and that's at 30%. Oh. And then just to finish it off, we're just going to cut out the low and the highs again. Okay, now I'm just going to turn the volume of number 1 down, kind of solo both of them, and just mix this in until I think it sounds appropriate. So now I feel like they're both working together. We have the second layer is kind of doing the depth of the sound, and this first layer is kind of just filling in the gaps just with and both delays are working quite nicely with each other. So the only other thing that's happening in this sound really is like we have this section here. Which is more or less this layer that's just been cut up. This layer sounds like this. So I've more or less just cut this up, and all what I have done here is when I was first making this gated effect with this MIDI pattern in G. For this sound, we've more or less done the exact same process. However, we're just using a long note. So there's no rhythmic stuff happening. It sounds more rolling when done with a long note. So I'll just play that. And you can see it's the same as we have the automation here with the filter, more or less the same patch, the same processing, but just with a long note. and yeah, going between saw and pulse. This has been bounced down into an audio like this. And in this instance, I've just cut it up just so it's a little bit more rhythmical. We have this reverb to kind of fill in the gaps, so when it stops it kind of tails off. And in this particular instance it's just playing straight, no processing, so you have like kind of dry and wet feed kind of mixing in and out of each other. I'm just going to solo these and play them together. Okay, cool. So this more rolling one note section, I'm going to do another recording and see if I can come up with something similar to what I've done here in the example. So again, another audio channel, I'm going to set to resampling just at the top here. And I'm just going to hit record. Deactivate this bit. And we can start to process this now. So I can just highlight sections like this and press Command D and that duplicate it. Put a fade on. If I press A, I can go between fades. Delete these sections. Let's do a bit of time stretching as well. So if I'll delete this and go to my clavier. If I press +2, I think that's a plus, it will double the length of the audio. Go between these different warp modes. Quite like that. Just have that bit there. And then what we got here, we got another bit of glitchiness. And what processing have we got? EQ. We've just got an EQ and a bit of return channel. EQ8, low cut. A little notch in the mids, a little bit dip in the highs. Let's play it with the other two layers. Let's have a little listen with some of the track. Cool. Well, I think that takes us to the end of this demonstration. I hope you enjoyed this sound design tutorial. Hope to see you in some of the future videos. Thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate you checking out this this sound design video series. Hopefully see you again soon, and take care.